Hello everyone, today we're going to be making a macrame plant hanger. For this you're going to need 8 by 4 meters of cord as well as 2 by 50 centimeters of cord and a wooden ring. To begin, take the 8 cords, fold them in half to find the central point, then thread them through the wooden ring with the central point being directly on the wooden ring once they're thread through. Before you move on, just make sure that all cords at the bottom are roughly the same length. To begin with, we're going to be creating a gathering knot. To do so, please use the 50 centimeter cord. You will need to create a 5 centimeter loop that faces downwards, which is the direction we're wrapping this knot in. You will then need to wrap the longer part of that cord, which is left over, around nice and tightly, making sure all of the cords we are gathering are held together. And we're going to be wrapping that long end around until you reach a desired length of the wrap. Once you've completed the wrapping stage, you will need to loop the remainder of that long end through the loop that we created, and then tighten the loop from the top. As you tighten, the loop and the extra string will disappear at the bottom. Once the knot feels secure, you can cut both ends down so that they are barely visible. By looping the cord through the wooden ring, you have doubled the amount of cord you are working with. So you now have 16 pieces and you will be using 4 pieces at a time to create this pattern. To begin, we will create a spiral sinnet. The trick with this is that the right hand cord will always travel over the top of the middle cords and under the left hand cord. And the left hand cord will always travel behind the middle cords and to the front of the right hand cord. You will need to complete this pattern over and over again in order to create that spiral effect. Using this spiral knot, I am going to be creating roughly a 10 centimeter sinnet. This tutorial does allow you a little bit of creative freedom. While I teach you the pattern, you can interpret it as you wish. You may wish to make some of the sinnets longer, some of them shorter, whatever suits your creative needs. However, please be aware that the longer you make the sinnets, the more material it uses up, the shorter it will make your plant hanger in the long run. Once you have completed the first sinnet bundle, you will need to divide the remaining 12 cords into groups of 4 and repeat that exercise again. And here you go, we have 4 bundles completed. We are now going to be creating a second spiral sinnet on each of the bundles. To do so, simply leave around 20 centimeters of rope between the end of the top sinnet and the start of the bottom sinnet. Once you have reached the desired length for the first spiral sinnet, we're going to do exactly the same on the second bundle, and then the third, and then the fourth. But back to the second. Now the cord I'm using is braided cord, which means it has a little bit more stretch to it, a little bit more give. So when I tie the first knot of the second sinnet on the second bundle, I try not to pull down on it too hard so I get the real reflection of how low or how high or how accurate the knots are going to be. It may take you a few knots before you realise that the sinnet will be too high compared to the first bundle or too low. That's okay, I still get it wrong quite frequently. You will simply need to undo those few knots you have created and start over. Remember, macrame is about patience and trying things again. Once you've created a spiral sinnet on each of the 4 bundles, it's important to just put them together, make sure they're all the same length, make sure they all look lovely together. Here we go, we've got all 4 that I created earlier. Your plant hanger should start to look something like this. Next, we're going to take 2 outer cords closest to each other from 2 separate bundles to create a square knot. Unlike the spiral knot, in a square knot, it is the same one cord that always travels over the middle throughout the square knot sinnet. In this example, it is the right cord that is always traveling over the middle 2 cords, and it is always the left cord that is traveling under the middle cords. Use the 2 outer cords closest to each other to create another square knot. Here, obviously, I've made one of them longer than the other and they look a little bit unequal. Again, don't be afraid to amend and perfect what you are making throughout. As you work your way around and connect the bundles using the outer cords, you may need to go around again because of the material you're using, and if you're using the same material as I am, which is a braided rope, you will find that sometimes they look a little bit uneven once you have completed all of the square knots. Right now we are creating the basket part that is going to be holding the flower pot. So pay special attention to the distance that you are going to have between the current row of square knots and the next row. Once you're happy with all of their positioning, you will have something resembling this net. You may wish to leave the square knots as they are, or you could create a small sinnet out of the 3 square knots. Essentially what you're doing is creating 3 square knots in a row, nice and tight, to create that sinnet. Once you've completed that part, we are going to be interconnecting the bundles once more, around 5 to 6 centimeters further down from the square knot or the square knot sinnet that you've just completed. Now this will be the final interconnections that we make before we gather the cords together in another gathering knot and complete our lovely plant hanger. So you're nearly there, hang in there. Now a great tip for creating the right sized plant hanger for the pot that you want to put in it. If you have a larger pot, you will need to leave more space between the first lot of square knots or square knot sinnets and the second square knot, which we are currently creating. You will see at the end that when you stretch these out, they create a zigzag pattern. Now that zigzag pattern is what helps secure the plant in. In a moment, when I stretch out the plant hanger, you'll be able to see how the distance between the two square knots affects how big a pot you can place in there. On this occasion, I'm using quite a small pot. There it is with a little heart, how cute. And this pot I have placed inside to determine where to start the gathering knot from, making sure it's nice and secure, not too high, not too low, allowing whatever plant lives in there to have plenty of room to sprout out either side of the cords. Once you're satisfied with how your pot sits within the plant hanger, remove it. Keeping your hand on where you want to tie the gathering knot or measuring where you want it to start. We're going to use the second 50cm cord to create the gathering knot. Exactly the same as at the start of this plant hanger, we are going to create a loop pointing downwards, and the remainder of the cord is going to be wrapped around the cords we're gathering as well as the loop we have created. Once you're satisfied with the length of the wrap, the remaining cord is going to pull through the loop, and then you're going to tag really tight on the top cord, which is going to in turn hide the loop and excess cord. You will then be able to trim off the additional cord, which is shorter than all the rest, as close as you want to the wrap, ensuring that it's all nice and secure. And there we have it. The last part is we're going to create a tassel at the bottom by trimming the excess cord off, and we have a complete plant hanger. Congratulations, I really hope you love it. Thank you so much for joining me today, and don't forget to share your makes with me on social media. I can't wait to see them.